I'm 84 years old, and I outlived my wife by 3 winters. That's still strange to say. I keep thinking she's in the kitchen, rinsing a cup, or standing by the window watching the birds fight over the feeder. But the house is quiet now, quieter than I ever let it be when she was alive. Nobody told me this about marriage. Or maybe they did, and I didn't listen. They told me about commitment and compromise and patience. They told me it would be work. They didn't tell me how the real loss comes long before the funeral. They didn't tell me how easy it is to be married and still miss the whole thing. When you're young, you think marriage is something you achieve. You stand in a church, you say your vows, you slide a ring on a finger. You think that's the hard part. After that, you believe it will just run like a good engine. I met her when I was 27. She was 24. Her name was Evelyn. She had a laugh that embarrassed her because it came out too loud. I loved that laugh. It made me feel like I'd done something right. I was just starting out at the accounting firm then. I had a thin tie and a borrowed suit and a head full of numbers. I wanted to prove myself. I wanted my father to look at me the way he looked at men who owned things. Evelyn didn't care about any of that. She worked at the library and talked about books like they were living creatures. She believed in slow dinners and long walks. I believed in promotions. We got married in a small church on Maple Street. I remember how tight my shoes felt. I remember her hand shaking in mine. I remember thinking, I will take care of her. I will build something solid. And I did. I worked. I stayed late. I came home with my tie loosened and my mind still at the office. She would be sitting at the table, waiting to eat with me. I told myself that was love, her waiting. When our first son was born, I held him for maybe 5 minutes before I had to take a call from a client. It felt important. Everything felt important back then. I missed his first steps because I was in Chicago closing a deal. She told me about it over the phone. She was laughing, breathless. You should have seen him, she said. I told her we'd see plenty more steps. There are always more steps, you think. That's the lie nobody points out. We had a daughter 3 years later. I was making more money by then. We bought a bigger house with a yard and a swing set. I mowed the lawn every Sunday like it was a badge of honor. I thought a neat lawn meant I was a good husband. Evelyn would ask me to sit on the porch with her in the evenings. Just 10 minutes, she'd say. I'd say I was tired, or I'd bring the newspaper with me and fold it open like a wall. She stopped asking after a while. That's how it happens. Not with shouting, not with slammed doors, just with small silences that grow roots. We didn't fight much. People used to say that about us like it was a compliment. You two are so steady. And we were steady. We paid our bills. We went to parent-teacher conferences. We hosted Christmas dinner. But I can't remember the last time, in those middle years, that I really looked at her. I mean looked. The way I did when she was 24 and laughing too loud. She changed her hair once, cut it short. I noticed 3 days later. She laughed it off, but I saw something close up in her eyes. A door closing quietly. In my 40s, I made partner. That was the mountain. I remember standing in my office after they told me, staring at my name on the door. I thought, this is it. This is the proof. I took her to dinner that night. A fancy place with white tablecloths. I talked about projections and clients and the future of the firm. She nodded and smiled. At one point, she reached across the table and put her hand over mine. Are you happy? She asked. I said yes without thinking. I never asked her the same question. The years moved the way years do. Our son left for college. Our daughter followed. The house got quieter. I thought we'd finally have time then. Time for those porch evenings. Time for long walks. But by then, we were out of practice. We sat across from each other at breakfast like polite strangers. We knew each other's schedules, medications, favorite foods. But I didn't know what kept her awake at night. I didn't know what she regretted. I didn't know if she was lonely sitting 3 feet from me. One night she said, "Do you ever think about when we're gone?" I shrugged. That's a long way off. She looked at me for a long moment. It isn't, she said. I was 68 when she got sick. Pancreatic cancer. That word still feels heavy in my mouth. By then I had retired. I had all the time in the world. It was finally there, laid out in front of us like a clean, empty road. And she was dying. I drove her to appointments. I sat in waiting rooms with outdated magazines and terrible coffee. I held her hand during chemo. I told myself this was devotion. This was love, finally expressed in action. But one afternoon, she was lying in the hospital bed, thin and pale, and she said something I can't forget. "I didn't want you at the hospital," she whispered. "I wanted you on the porch." It wasn't cruel. She wasn't angry. That's what made it worse. She was telling the truth. All those years she'd asked for 10 minutes. 10 small, ordinary minutes. And I had given them to meetings and clients and a lawn that no one remembers now. I told myself I had done it for us. For security. For comfort. And maybe that's partly true. We never worried about money. The kids had good schools. The house was paid off. But I traded presents for provision, and I didn't realize it was a trade. She died on a Tuesday morning in early spring. The trees outside the hospital were just beginning to bud. I remember thinking how unfair that was. The world renewing itself while she slipped away. When I came home alone, the house felt wrong. Too big, too still. Her chair by the window was empty, but the indent in the cushion was still there. I walked out to the porch that evening. I sat down where she used to sit. The birds were loud. The air was soft. It was exactly the kind of evening she would have loved. I sat there for 2 hours. I didn't know what to do with all that time. That's the part nobody tells you about marriage. It isn't the grand betrayals that undo you. It's the ordinary evenings you assume will repeat forever. It's the conversations you postpone because there will be a better moment. It's the hand you don't hold because you think it will always be within reach. Our children visit when they can. They have their own lives, their own careers. I see in my son the same drive I had, the same long hours. Sometimes I want to grab him and say, "Go home, sit on the porch." But I don't. He has to learn it himself, I suppose. There are things that can't be fixed. I can't go back to that young woman with the loud laugh and tell her I will choose differently. I can't give her the thousands of tiny moments I withheld without even noticing. I look at our wedding photos sometimes. Two thin, hopeful people staring at a future they thought was endless. I want to reach into that picture and shake the young man by the shoulders. "You will not get more time," I'd tell him. "Not the kind you think." But he wouldn't listen. He's busy. He's building something. Now I wake up early because there's no one beside me to keep sleeping for. I make coffee for one. I sit by the window she loved. I watch the birds fight over the feeder. I talk to her sometimes, quietly. I tell her about the weather, about the kids. I say I'm sorry more than I say anything else. I am grateful too. That's the strange part. We had 56 years together. That's more than many get. There was kindness in our marriage. There was loyalty. There was shared history no one else will ever fully know. But there was also absence. Mine. If you're listening to me now, I won't tell you what to do. I don't have that right. I only know what I learned too late. The big achievements fade. The titles disappear. The lawn grows over no matter how neatly you cut it. What stays, what haunts you, are the quiet invitations you declined. "Just 10 minutes," she used to say. I would give anything for 10 minutes now. At 84, you don't think much about the future. You think about the past, and you measure it differently. Not in years or income or square footage. You measure it in evenings, in laughter, in how often you looked up from the paper. Nobody told me this about marriage, that it is less about staying and more about seeing, less about providing and more about pausing. It isn't built in the big gestures, it's built or eroded in the smallest choices. I love my wife. I never doubted that. I just thought love could wait until I was less busy. It can't. If this meant something to you, if you're sitting beside someone who still reaches for your hand, don't wait for the right moment. The right moment is usually the quiet one you're about to miss. As for me, I'll be on the porch this evening. The birds will come, the light will fade, and I'll sit there a little longer than I used to, listening to a laugh that isn't there anymore, wishing I had listened better when it was.